What happens when a simple, friendly daytime TV interview unravels into one of the most tense on-air confrontations in recent memory? Two of television's most beloved personalities sat down expecting an easy conversation. But what unfolded shocked everyone watching live. Kelly Clarkson welcomed Valerie Bertinelli onto her show with her usual warmth, the audience applauding as Valerie walked out in a burgundy blazer and jeans, waving with the familiar smile fans have loved for years. They hugged, settled into their chairs, and slipped into light chatter about cooking, new projects, and life in general. The audience laughed in all the right places, and for the first 7 minutes, everything seemed perfectly normal. Then Kelly leaned forward, her expression shifting from cheerful host to serious interviewer. She brought up a topic that had been spreading rapidly on social media, asking Valerie about the criticism surrounding her recent comments on wellness and body image. Valerie's smile faded immediately. Her jaw tightened as she argued that the backlash was an unfair distortion of her words, insisting that anyone who listened to her full interviews rather than skimming headlines would understand her true intentions. But Kelly pressed further, pointing out that it wasn't just headline chatter. Health professionals had raised concerns too. She asked if Valerie believed any of the criticism had merit. The audience went silent. Valerie crossed her arms and said people were too eager to be offended and too quick to tear down. Women sharing their personal stories. She stressed that she had never claimed to be a medical professional or told anyone what to do with their body. She had simply shared her own journey, which had somehow become controversial. Kelly, calm but firm, reminded her that having a large platform comes with responsibility. When public figures speak about sensitive issues like body image, she said, their words carry weight, especially for young viewers and those struggling with their own self-worth. Valerie uncrossed her arms and leaned forward, her voice edged with a sharpness that hadn't been there before. She told Kelly, with all due respect, I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I was navigating these conversations long before social media existed. I don't need a lecture about responsibility from someone who hasn't walked in my shoes. The tension thickened instantly. Kelly's expression hardened as she replied that she wasn't lecturing hers. She was asking a legitimate question, one that a lot of people wanted answered, and she admitted she was surprised by Valerie's defensiveness. Valerie let out a short, humorless laugh. She accused Kelly of inviting her under the pretense of a friendly conversation about her cookbook and her life, only to ambush her with gotcha questions as if this were investigative journalism. That wasn't defensiveness, she said. That was calling the moment what it was. Kelly stayed calm but firm, denying that it was an ambush and insisting that these were public questions. She thought Valerie would want to address directly instead of through curated statements from publicists or carefully worded social media posts. Isn't that what interviews are supposed to be about? She asked. Valerie suddenly stood up, drawing gasps from the audience. She snapped that Kelly didn't want real conversations. She wanted a viral moment, a breakdown, an apology she didn't believe she owed, all for the sake of clicks and views. She insisted she'd been in the business too long to fall for that. Kelly rose too, her voice lifting slightly as she defended her show's reputation for honest and authentic conversations. She wasn't trying to trap anyone. She was simply trying to understand Valerie's perspective. But Valerie wasn't willing to engage. Valerie pointed at her sharply, accusing Kelly of sitting in her perfect little studio, with her perfect little audience, and pretending to be America's sweetheart while using people for content. She declared she was done being Kelly's content. The audience sat in stunned silence as Kelly's face flushed red. She fired back that Valerie had agreed to the interview and that if she couldn't handle questions about things she had said publicly, maybe she shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Valerie grabbed her purse and said, maybe Kelly was right, maybe. She shouldn't do interviews where the host had already decided she was guilty before she even sat down. This was a mistake. She said Kelly crossed her arms and told her that walking away wouldn't make the criticism disappear. At some point, she would have to address it instead of attacking anyone who brought it up. Valerie stepped closer, telling Kelly she wasn't running. She was removing herself from a hostile environment designed to make her look bad. And Kelly knew it. Kelly took a step back, insisting nothing was set up and that Valerie was making herself look bad by refusing to confront legitimate criticism. She pointed out that she'd had hundreds of guests, many tackling difficult topics, and that the difference was those guests were willing to have the conversation. Asterisk. Valerie's eyes narrowed as she warned Kelly not to patronize her. She reminded her that she'd been doing interviews for decades and could tell when someone was trying to make an example out of her. Kelly threw her hands up, saying Valerie wasn't a victim. She had said things publicly that sparked real concerns from real people. And all Kelly had done was ask about them. "That's literally my job," she said. Valerie laughed bitterly again, arguing that Kelly's real job was to entertain, make people feel good, and sell products during commercial breaks. She told Kelly not to pretend she was a hard-hitting journalist holding people accountable. "You're a talk show host who used to be a singer," she said. "And a good one, but that doesn't make you Barbara Walters." The audience let out a collective gasp at that jab, and Kelly's face shifted from flushed to pale as her mouth opened slightly before she forced herself to regain composure. "Wow, okay," she said. "So now we're just going to insult each other instead of having an actual discussion. That's where we are." Valerie set her purse back down, crossed her arms, and mirrored Kelly's earlier posture. She insisted that Kelly had started this by bringing her on the show under false pretenses. Asking loaded questions meant to put her on the defensive, and acting surprised when she refused to play along. "What did you expect would happen?" she asked. Kelly's voice rose as she said she expected Valerie to be able to defend her own words, to have thought through what she'd said publicly, and to take some accountability instead of blaming everyone for misunderstanding her. Valerie stepped closer, her voice lowering but growing sharper, and challenged Kelly to talk about accountability, about how Kelly built her brand on relatability while living in a mansion with a team managing every aspect of her life. How she preached authenticity while reading off teleprompters and scripts. "Where's your accountability?" she demanded. Kelly's jaw dropped as she said that had nothing to do with the topic, accusing Valerie of deflecting because she didn't have a strong answer. Valerie shook her head and said she was pointing out the hypocrisy of being judged by someone just as manufactured as anyone else. The difference being that Kelly had convinced people otherwise. Kelly pointed at her, her hands shaking, insisting she'd never claimed to be perfect and had openly discussed her own struggles. But she didn't spread potentially harmful wellness messaging and get offended when people questioned it. That, she said, was the difference between them. Valerie's voice went cold as she said the real difference was that she had earned her place over decades of work and scrutiny Kelly couldn't imagine. While Kelly had gotten a golden ticket from a singing competition and simply rode the wave. The audience murmured, some uncomfortable, others riveted, while Kelly fired back that she had worked incredibly hard, releasing albums, touring, and building the show from the ground up. "How dare you diminish that because you're mad I asked you a tough question?" Valerie picked up her purse again, saying she wasn't mad, she was disappointed. Disappointed that someone she thought understood what it meant to be a woman in the industry would pull a stunt like this for ratings. "It's beneath you," she said. "Or at least I thought it was." Kelly's voice cracked slightly as she insisted this wasn't a stunt, but her doing her job with integrity. She wasn't going to ask soft questions just because someone was famous or had been around a long time. Everyone deserved to be asked hard questions. Valerie turned toward the exit and told Kelly to ask herself the hard questions instead. Was this really the kind of show she wanted to run? Was ambushing guests the legacy she wanted to leave? She hoped Kelly could live with the answers, Kelly called after her, urging her not to walk out and saying they could finish the conversation like adults, that Valerie didn't have to run away. Valerie stopped, turned back, and said she wasn't running. She was refusing to participate in Kelly's circus. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see that says everything about where you are right now. Kelly walked toward her, insisting Valerie was the one making a scene and the one who couldn't handle a simple question, and she needed to own that. Valerie's face reddened as she snapped that nothing about Kelly's question had been simple. She accused Kelly of coming at her with an agenda and a pre-written narrative, and getting defensive when she didn't follow the script. "That's not journalism," she said. "That's not even good television. That's just mean." Kelly stopped a few feet away, insisting she had been respectful the entire time. She asked one question, and Valerie responded by attacking her personally, insulting her career and questioning her integrity. Yet Kelly was being called the mean one. "Are you hearing yourself?" she asked. Valerie's voice shook with anger as she said Kelly had ambushed her on national television and made her look like a villain who didn't care about people's health. She accused Kelly of twisting her words into something ugly and doing it with a smile on her face, which, she said, made it even worse. Kelly's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady as she stood her ground. She said she hadn't twisted anything, that she had only repeated Valerie's own words back to her. If Valerie didn't like how they sounded, maybe that was something she needed to think about. Maybe that was the real issue. Valerie wiped at her eyes, though it wasn't clear if they were filled with anger or hurt. She told Kelly she was right. Maybe she did need to think about things. About why she thought coming here was a good idea. About who she could trust in this industry. And clearly, Kelly wasn't on that list anymore. Kelly's voice dropped to a whisper the microphones barely caught. Was that really how Valerie wanted to leave things? After everything, after years of being in the same circles, was she really going to burn this bridge? Valerie stepped closer, only a few feet away, her voice cutting through the tension. Kelly hadn't asked a difficult question, she said. She had put her in an impossible position where anything she said could be used against her. Kelly had forced her into a choice: grovel and apologize for things taken out of context, or look defensive and difficult. And Kelly knew it when she planned this. Tears streamed down Kelly's face as she insisted she had given Valerie every opportunity to explain herself, to clarify her position, to help people understand her perspective. Valerie had chosen to attack instead. She was the one who made it personal, not Kelly. Valerie's voice hardened as she said it became personal the moment Kelly used their supposed friendship to lure her into a trap. She knew exactly how producers strategized to squeeze drama out of guests. She'd been played before, but she never thought Kelly would be the one doing it. Kelly wiped her face and told her they weren't friends. They were friendly colleagues, professionals in the same space. Real friends had honest conversations and told each other the truth, even when it was painful. If they had truly been friends, Valerie would know Kelly would never intentionally hurt someone she cared about. Valerie laughed, almost hysterically, pointing out that she was being hurt right now in camera, in front of an audience, in a moment that would be replayed endlessly. And Kelly was acting like she was the one being wronged. That, Valerie said, was what made this whole situation so twisted. Kelly's voice rose as she insisted. She wasn't playing a victim, she was trying to have a conversation while Valerie kept turning everything into an attack. The issue wasn't Kelly. It was Valerie's own words and whether she stood by them. Valerie threw her hands up and finally answered. She stood by everything she had said, her journey, her experiences, her right to share her story. What she didn't stand by was the way her words had been twisted and manipulated by people with agendas, which apparently included Kelly. She asked if that was what Kelly wanted to hear. Kelly crossed her arms again and told Valerie that all she wanted was some acknowledgement, just a little recognition that maybe she could have been more careful with her words. That maybe she understood why people were concerned. That maybe she cared more about the impact of her message than about being right. But clearly, she said, that was too much to ask. Valerie's voice dropped into a low growl as she shot back that Kelly wanted her to apologize for existing, for being human, imperfect, and figuring things out along the way. She accused Kelly of wanting her to grovel, simply because some people chose to be offended by her honesty, and she refused to apologize for being real. Kelly uncrossed her arms and held them out, insisting no one wanted her to apologize for being human, only to take responsibility for her platform and influence. If Valerie couldn't see the difference, Kelly told her she didn't know what else to say. Valerie picked up her purse again, this time with slow, deliberate finality. She told Kelly not to say anything else. Because they were done, the interview was over, the conversation was over, and whatever relationship they had was over too. She hoped it was worth it. Kelly's voice finally cracked as she begged Valerie not to leave like this, saying they could work through it and find a way to understand each other. But Valerie turned her back and walked toward the exit. There was nothing to work through, she said. Kelly had shown her who she really was, and Valerie believed her. She wished Kelly a nice show and kept walking. Kelly called after her, louder now, saying she couldn't just walk off during a taping. They had an audience. The cameras were rolling. The show wasn't over. Valerie didn't turn around. She simply said, "Watch me." Kelly looked to her producers in desperation, telling someone to stop her, insisting this wasn't how things were supposed to end. 2 security guards emerged from the wings, stepping into Valerie's path. One of them held up his hand and calmly told her she needed to return to the stage, that she couldn't leave until the show was over. Valerie stopped and stared at the guards, then at Kelly. Her voice hardened into ice as she asked if Kelly was really having her detained. Kelly hurried toward them, insisting she wasn't detaining anyone. She only wanted Valerie to stay and finish what they started. They could take a break, regroup, and handle things properly. Valerie turned to the guards again and told them to move. The taller guard shifted uneasily and explained he was just doing his job, asking her once more to return to the stage. Valerie's voice rose sharply as she told him to get out of her way, that she was leaving and they couldn't keep her there against her will because that was kidnapping. Kelly stepped quickly between Valerie and the guards, saying no one was kidnapping anyone and telling her to stop being dramatic. She begged Valerie to sit back down so they could figure things out. Valerie stared into Kelly's eyes and told her to move. She warned her. Kelly stayed where she was, asking what Valerie planned to do. The room froze. Even the audience held their breath. Then Valerie pushed past Kelly firmly, not violently, but enough to send Kelly stumbling backward. Immediately, the guard stepped in and grabbed Valerie's arms. She struggled, yelling at them to get their hands off her, insisting this was assault. Kelly stood back with her hand over her mouth, stunned by how quickly everything had escalated, telling them to stop and let her go. But it was too late. The guards were already escorting Valerie toward the exit. Her purse fell to the floor as she twisted against their hold, shouting that they were all going to regret this, that the world would know what happened here today. The audience erupted into chaos, some people standing, others crying, others pulling out their phones despite the no-phone policy. Kelly stood frozen in the middle of the stage, watching the doors close behind Valerie. When the room finally went still again, she turned to the audience, tears streaming down her face, and apologized for what they had witnessed. She said that wasn't supposed to happen, that none of it was supposed to go like that. Tand announced a break. The cameras continued rolling for several long seconds before cutting away, capturing what would soon become one of the most shocking, uncomfortable moments in daytime television history.